Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. This is Bill Maddox in Durham, New Hampshire at the University of New Hampshire for another Advocacy Plan International webinar. We're really excited today to have with us guests from a number of different locations, United States to different parts of Africa. I'll introduce in a minute. Today we're going to be talking about advocacy and savings groups working for broader impact. We have been doing this series now for several months with Plan, and it's been really an exciting process for me. First of all, to get to know the kind of depth of what Plan's work is across the world, and in particular the savings group work they're doing. This particular webinar for me is I think really fascinating because it kind of teaches us that savings groups can be a force much stronger than just what happens within communities, which within savings groups, of course, is powerful. We know that, but beyond the community level, to the regional level, up to the national level, savings groups have the incredible opportunity to make an impact through advocacy on making social change in laws, change in access to services, change in national policy. So in today's webinar, we're really very excited to have with us, as usual, our kind of co-moderator for this series, John Schiller. John Schiller is the savings group advisor, Plan's global advisor for savings groups. And John is going to be leading this webinar in the beginning to tell us about some of these great models. We also have with us Leila Asari. Leila is the policy advisor at Plan International Headquarters in Woking, UK. We have Michelle Kanonu. Michelle is currently working in Plan International Benin as a program unit manager, and he'll be speaking to us from Benin. And Stella Tungaraza. Stella is an expert in the field of community managed microfinance with 19 years experience, and a senior in microfinance and a savings group specialist in East Africa. So we're going to have, I think, a very interesting webinar. Let me give you some of the ground rules here, just so you know. We will have a couple of polls. Those polls will come up pretty quickly in the beginning of the webinar. Please look at the controls on your screen to respond to the polls. We'll give you half a minute or so to respond to the polls, and then Bianca will announce the results of those polls. Then we'll be joining presentations by Leila, Michelle, and Stella, and we're going to then open it up to questions. So when the Q&A part comes on, please use the Q&A box, ask your questions. If you want to ask your question on mic, you can let us know when you write your question, and we could open up your mic and you can actually ask our presenters the question that you're interested in getting an answer to. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll make some important announcements about some interesting and exciting SMDP events that are coming up. So without further ado, I'm really very happy to introduce John Schiller, who is going to walk us through and introduce us to the topic and to our other speakers. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Bill. And greetings, everyone. And thank you for giving us a part of your day. Plan has been promoting savings groups since 2003. And really, until very recently, advocacy was not a part of the savings groups initiative, and it sort of speaks to the power of these groups that things that you didn't think they could do become part of their agenda, and therefore have become part of our agenda. And we have actually we have three examples of advocacy. One of which comes from Plan Benin, which has been promoting savings groups since around 2006. It was one of our first West Africa programs. They've never had a major grant for this work. They've invested core funds year after year and have really shown steady and solid growth. The quality of the groups in Benin is exceptional. They've built up to 84,000 members. And as you can see on the slide, the vast majority of these are women and girls. And in addition to promoting the groups, Plan Benin has devoted efforts to organize them into networks. This came about as a result of an expressed wish on the part of the groups to be able to act more in concert and to do more for the communities where they were having access to financial services. In addition to this, Plan Benin has integrated training in advocacy and women's leadership, which of course has contributed to what they've been able to do on the advocacy front. Secondly, we have Plan Tanzania, which goes back even a bit further. It was the first program in Eastern Africa the first Plan program to promote savings groups. They have benefited from some major grants. The two most notable being the two phases of the Barclays bank-funded and done in collaboration with CARE Banking on Change program. Currently, they're at 141,000 members, with 75% women and girls. And as a result of the Barclays funding and the work done under Banking on Change, there's been a lot of emphasis on bringing groups to children and youth, and in integrating things like enterprise training and financial education to give the program more of an economic security focus. Plan Tanzania's great accomplishment has been the sort of the conceptualization of a higher level savings group that they call intermediating associations. These are collections of savings groups that intermediate their own money for the purpose of savings and loans, and which function much like individual savings groups. And we'll hear a little bit more about this later, because these EMAs have been at one of the central points of the advocacy efforts in Tanzania. To present these, we have Michael Kahonu, who Bill said is a program unit manager in southern Benin, based in Boikon. He'll be presenting on the Benin experience. And then Stella Tungaraza, who's a former colleague, worked long years with Plan and now is working as an independent consultant, who will present the two Tanzania examples. I will turn this back to either Bill or Bianca. I'm not sure who's going to manage the poll. Could you go to that, please? Okay, our first question is to ask you how you would define advocacy. Is it a group of parents lobbying the school board for better attendance? Is it a child's rights coalition advocating for better integrated national, I can't read the rest of the sentence, excuse me. Can you see it, Bill?
Integrated national approach to prevent and respond to violence against children.
Okay, maybe you better read these then.
Sure. C, a public campaign to pressure local government to improve safety of local roads and lighting, or all of the above. So the poll should pop up. You have a few seconds to respond to A, B, C, or D. Those of you that are being bashful about the poll, go ahead, join the poll. It won't hurt. This is easier than voting in November in the United States. All right, so let's wrap up our poll and see what our results are. And I'm not sure if they'll come up on the screen, so I'm going to ask Bianca to read the results of the poll just in case we can't see them.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Bill. So the results are 75% of our audience said all of the above, and 25% of our audience said a public campaign to pressure local government to improve safety of local roads and lighting.
Excellent. So now what we want to do with our second poll is get a sense of what you are doing. So have you been involved in advocacy in your savings group work? Yes or no? And if you have been, we might be calling on you later on in the webinar to share some of your experiences. So go ahead and answer this poll. I'll give you a couple more seconds. This is a quick one. Okay. Michelle, could you kindly put your mic on mute, because we can hear all the children in Benin playing, which is great. But all right, Bianca, what are the results of the poll?
Okay, 63% said no and 38% answered yes.
Oh, great. So 38% of those that answer the poll are doing some type of advocacy work in savings group. Great. Now I think what we'll do is move on to introduce Layla Asrari. Layla is going to talk to us about kind of the big picture of plan and advocacy, and what the approach to advocacy plan has been using, and how this has been implemented through savings groups. Layla?
Unmuting. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me on today's call. It's great to be here. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to join this webinar. So I'll just start with the first poll result, for which it's great. Most of you answered D, 75%, which means that we have a strong understanding in this room of the different types of activity that constitute advocacy. Essentially, all of the examples given can be considered to be advocacy. And so during my presentation, hopefully I'll illuminate why that is the case and what are the options. So today I'll be talking more about advocacy methodologies and techniques that Plan International uses broadly, rather than specifically relating to savings groups in more detail, which I know others on the webinar will cover. So Plan International itself is actually relatively new in the advocacy space. We've only had it as a core strategy for about 10 years. So we're still refining our approach and thinking, but a couple of initial points to make. Our commitment to advocacy is built on the fact that we're a rights-based organization, which means that we believe governments are primary duty bearers for rights. And in the case of Plan, obviously our priority is children's rights. But we believe that in order to achieve the most sustainable change for the greatest number of children, we need to work to influence governments to take on and fulfill their responsibilities as duty bearers. Could I have the next slide, please? Great. Okay, so we've been using this visual at Plan International for a few months now. It's taken from a book called Gender at Work, and we found it really helpful in thinking about how change happens and the role of advocacy and programming within this. I think often we refer to advocacy as the things on the right of your screen, the formal space, and we refer to some of our programming as the things on the left. But actually, Plan approaches advocacy in a way that looks at strategies in both of these spheres. So I'm just going to take some time to explain these axes. So on the bottom right, we have the formal and systems space. So this is really about laws and policies that are in place on any given issue. So for example, the laws around women's access to financial services or policies around access to education. Then on the top right, we have the formal and individual space. Which is about the allocation of resources or budgets or the implementation of laws and policies. So for example, if a country allocates 10% of its national budget on education, how this is divided up. Are resources going to the poorest areas where children don't have access to schools, or are they going to university research, for instance? Then on the top left, we have the informal and individual space. Which is about individual capacities, empowerment, and individual consciousness. So individuals recognizing their rights and feeling able to attain them. So for example, relating to savings groups, do individuals have financial literacy skills, understanding, the ability to manage budgets, etc. And then on the bottom left, we have the informal and systems space. So this could be about social norms or religious requirements or exclusionary practices the unwritten social rules or constraints that impact on an individual's or a group's ability to access their rights. So, for example, even where the law may allow women to access financial services, at the community level, is she empowered to do so? Or are there social constraints to her accessing finance? So this has been, the matrix in itself is a useful way framing to think about a kind of systems approach to advocacy. We need to look at all of these different spaces. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So in terms of plans, advocacy approaches, we have two main approaches to advocacy. So the first is Advocacy as Plan International, which involves speaking from our experience, our program evidence, and our policy analysis on issues that we're the most passionate about to try and achieve changed behavior of formal decision makers, which is usually governments. So this could include any of the issues we work on, whether that's around financial inclusion or education or girls' rights issues more broadly, girls' empowerment, whatever it might be. And it will also include work with communities to understand the issues and the solutions in depth. This type of advocacy focuses mainly on actors like, it could be ministers of education or parliamentarians, district government, those kinds of formal actors. And then processes like creating new laws or setting budgets. That's what we're dealing with in that kind of organization-led approach to advocacy. And then the second approach is around support to rights holders as advocates. So we work with young people and communities within networks and groups to empower them to be advocates and influencers themselves. Often that would be within their own families or schools or communities. So this involves building skills, capacity building on advocacy, power analysis, analyzing policies, gathering evidence on the situation, etc. And then we also help to facilitate links between these groups of citizen advocates and power holders so that they're able to have their voices heard. So plan as kind of a relationship broker. So these are the two approaches we have. And in terms of methodology, there are also a few fundamental principles which underpin how we operate. So firstly, advocacy should be based on sound and comprehensive policy and political analysis. And that could be the local, the national, the regional, or the global level, depending on the type of advocacy being done. Secondly, a thorough risk analysis and power holder dynamic analysis should be in place. Thirdly, we advocate on issues where we can demonstrate and utilize a robust evidence base. So essentially, we advocate on the issues that we also work on in terms of our programs. And then finally, we have clear strategies for the participation of young people in our advocacy, and that's Plan as a children's rights organization. But for other organizations and for some of our work, that group may be different. So maybe community participation more broadly or women's participation. So I think for savings groups, all of the above strategies can be effective approaches, depending on the nature and interest of the savings group and the capacity of the organization supporting them. So that's a broad overview, and that's where I'll stop. So I think we're going to hear from Michel next, but John, did you want to introduce him, or should we go straight to Michel?
Okay, I will introduce him again. Michel Kahonu is a program unit manager for Plan in southern Benin. And the area that he's going to talk about here, the Kufo department, is an area that he's responsible for, and where this example has taken place. It's actually rolled out over a number of years, as we'll hear. So Michel, I turn the floor over to you.
Michel, you might have to unmute your mic. We can't hear you.
Okay. Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay. In Benin, we are working in the community with 7 groups, And the 7 group are our platform of integration of all our program in communities, and we are working hard with 7 group in Benin. I will introduce you the country before going to the topics. The next slide, please. My presentation will be done by through the context, the project goals, the process, the strategy that we used to aim our objective, and the result and lesson learned from this experience. Next slide. Plan International operating in Benin since 1994, and Benin is located in West Africa and is bordered by the Atlantic Ocean in the south, Niger and Burkina Faso in the north, Togo in the west, and Nigeria in the east. Benin population in 2013 was 9,983 people, of which we have 51% who are female. And we have 2 program units in Benin. We have 3 at the end. At the beginning, we have Kufo, and we have also Atakura and Boikon, but we merge now 2 Kufo and Boikon to have 1 program unit, the program unit of the center, and we have the one in the north of the country, which named Atakura, program unit of Atakura. Kufo is one of the 12 departments of Benin, one of Plan Benin intervention area, and Kufo department is one of the poorest department in Benin. The review of the Millennium Development Goals indicators established in 2007 show that monetary and human poverty indexes are respectively 40% and 45%. And that situation of extreme poverty accounts for women and children vulnerability in that department. We also have to point out that women in Benin play double role. They are in production and in reproduction. And the main activity in rural area is agriculture. So it is in this context that Plan International working in Kufo department. So one of our target people are women. We are working with women to put in place 7 group, and the 7 group in the community are our first intervention to support women, to empower them, to help them to increase their revenue, their income. Next slide. Next slide, please. So I talk about the context in which we are operating in Kufo department. Next slide. So in this context, we set in Benin, and based on our approach and our strategic priority area in our country strategic plan, we have 4 strategic area where we are working in our country strategic plan. The first is community healthcare, including maternal, neonatal, child, youth sexual health. And the second is to access to quality education for all girls and boys, including in emergencies. The second strategic priority area for us is to promote child rights, child protection, child rights, including in emergency. And the fourth one is leadership and economic empowerment of women and youth, boys and girls toward the realization of child rights. So we set the project women empowerment through the the promotion of 7 group in Kufo based on our 4th strategic priority area. And then so this project goal is to ensure economic security for poor household of Kufo department. And the specific objective of this project is to facilitate accession of a new members of 7 group model. And the second one is to facilitate the creation of a network of VSLA in the 6th district of Kufo department, because we discussed with VSLA to see how we can gather the efforts to be more powerful to advocate for their rights. And the third specific objective, is to build the capacity of 7 group members through training on various themes such as advocacy, leadership, and how to transform local crops in the community. Next slide. This project is built on Women's Empowerment Project Theory of Change of Plan International. And according to this theory of change, the project is working to empower women through the series of village saving and loans association. And these groups have been used to give women greater access to essential financial opportunities and to develop their leadership capacities. And these groups are working to put in place this solid network in the communities. And the objective of this project is to strengthen women, to connect them with the local government, to help them to advocate, to discuss with authority, local authority, department authority, and national authority at all levels. And through this network, we are supporting women to influence decision-making process in the community, in the department, and at national level, to help them to have equitable access to social services. So, to reach our objective, we support the 7 group within the community to have a network at all level. Next slide. All level. We give them a training on how to manage the group, on VSLA approach, and they set at village level. They have 7 group at village level, and we have as 2,188 7 group in Kufo department in all our village where we are working. And those groups set at arrondissement level. Arrondissement is the level which is up to the village, and we have 50 arrondissement in Kufo. And we set at this level, arrondissement level, which is composed by 7 groups from the village, which are in the same arrondissement. So we have 50 arrondissement network. And those network at arrondissement came at district level. It is commune. It is named commune in Benin, commune, but we can say district. So at district level, we have 6 districts in Kufo department, and we put in place six network, six VSLA network at this level. And now we are at department level, but the department level network is not formal. They are working informally, but we are working to officialize, to formally officialize them, take the required document, the role and regulation of the network at department level. So it is at this level that they make the advocacy work. But all decisions taken by the leaders of department women were provided by the network at district level. It is district level leaders who are at department level. So our aim is to go to national level, to have a VSLA at national level with technical support. Plan will support them through local NGO to have this national VSLA network. Next slide. So through this network, we are supporting the leaders who are at department and district level, who are in those networks, and we give them the package of support as training, technical monitoring, and we are all time with them at village level, at commune level. And in 2011, based on the training that they receive various training, and through this training, they have a capacity to mobilize local financial resources and to mobilize their peers within the community. And they, at 2011, they defined their vision to advocate to access to fertilizer, because they have a main problem in the community. They have a high eroded land in community, as they are all of them, or in majority, they are in agriculture. They have high eroded land, weak income, and high pressure of men, and more pressure toward men than women to get access to fertilizer. And they have a lack of fertilizer for food crops. The big quantity that the state sent to the community is for cotton, but they are in food crops. So they define their vision to advocate to access to the fertilizer, to food crops fertilizer, and they prioritize this need and announce it during the celebration of International Women's Day. And in 2012, they developed the action plan. They defined the action plan and defined the strategy to advocate, and they mobilized their own resources. It is a special member contribution, and they collect their own resources to have a fund to purchase a fertilizer, and they use the social fund from VSLA, from this 7 group to do the transport, the accommodation and meal during the several meetings that they had with local authority. They solicited plan support to introduce them to meet the local and departmental authorities who are in charge of fertilizer. And in 2013, they carry out this strategy through multiple meetings with local and national authority. They did the frequent travel with us, with local NGO staff, and they meet them to discuss their need. And they put in place with authority the strategy which helped them to have a fertilizer in the community. And in 2014, they went to see the authority with the money that they gathered to advocate to have a store, their own store, because in 2013 and 13 they get many fertilizer, but they distribute to the members of VSLA at community level immediately because they don't have a store to stock the fertilizer. But with local authorities, they get a local house in the community. They have two now, two stores in the community, in the district level, and where they stock the fertilizer. So government send them directly. They stock, women stock, and every year after yearly, they sell the fertilizer in the community up to present. So if you go to the community in those districts, you will see women's store where they are selling fertilizer. Next slide, please. Okay, here is a package of support that we gave them. They follow the training on advocacy, how to advocate for their right, on management, how to manage the network, and how to elaborate their business plan. And they follow the training on leadership and on VSLA methodology too. That are the training that we give them, and they have our support. We have local staff who support them during the process. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. As a result of this process, advocacy process, Plan support them in KUFO department, and they put in place their network at different level, and they advocate, and they advocate to have access to fertilizer, crop food for fertilizer, and they ready to mobilize local funds to get 370 tons of urea and NPK. It is the type of fertilizer that they got in community. They mobilized as 62 million of francs CFA to get these approximately $130 US dollars. They mobilize this money to get the fertilizer, and now they have the store where they stock the fertilizer. About 5,000 of poor women of KUFO department of 6 districts have joined VSLA for that operation, and that now they have fertilizer. We have fertilizer for women in the community, and they can go and have easily fertilizer for their farm, because most of them are farmers in communities. Next slide, please. In terms of lesson learned from this experience, we see that VSLA project is a social mobilization project, and it is also powerful local resource mobilization engine. And because through VSLA now, if we want to work with women at this level or at department level, and we talk to the leaders at department level, we can mobilize many women and we can work with them, and it is a big mobilization instrument. VSLA project contribute to support, or we support female leadership to empower them to have new leaders, because VSLA women, they get within this group, they get many training, and they do the exchange travel in the district, in the department, and we support them to do exchange visit to see how their peers are doing in the north of the country too. So this experience support them to strengthen their capacity to give them some knowledge to influence certain decisions at local level with the mayor or the local authority and the department authority. The storage system help VSLE members to better control and manage their association. Now, because they have one things who gather them with this fertilizer system. Each year they mobilize local resources to get fertilizer, and they have several meetings to discuss their problem, their concern in the community at this level and at department level. We can notice that advocacy takes a length of time and effort and patience, because we did this experience through 4 or 5 years before have a store, before get an official authorization for women to get fertilizer, and now they have another topic. They are developing now other topic for advocacy. It is access to land. Access to land, because land is a problem for women too. And after this, they are planning to do another advocacy to advocate on in other topics in the department through this VSLE network in the UFO department. Next, I think that we are at the end of our presentation, and it was a great experience for us to be with these women, to work with them, and to support them to reach their objective in the community. So if you have some question, I can answer them. Thank you.
All right, Michelle, we will take the questions at the end. And John, I'll let you introduce Stella and take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Bill. And we have I think there are 3 slides here. If we could just scroll through these, which show the different level networks that Michelle was referring to. I believe these were taken at International Women's Day. Stella Tungaraza, as I said, worked for Plan for many years, is now an independent consultant. And the example that she's going to give is of an effort in Tanzania launched by Plan to influence the national microfinance policy. And Stella, I wonder if you could explain briefly how this topic was chosen.
Stella, you might have to unmute your mic.
Thank you, John. Hello, everybody. In Tanzania, we started implementing VSLE in 2004. And when we started that, we had can you hear me now?
Yes, very good.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, keep going.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, Stella, we can hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, Stella. Please just talk.
Hello? Can you?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Unfortunately, she probably can't hear us. Stella, go ahead. The technology was cooperating so well. Well, these are some of the challenges of doing live webinars. Stella is in Kampala, and Kampala is experiencing some bandwidth issues right now.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Okay, maybe Bill, I can both ask and answer the question
Okay. You're pinch hitting, John.
because we've been through this, and what happened was that as most of you listeners, you participants probably know, savings groups have taken on a scale in Tanzania that's remarkable. And there was a point where a plan, FSD, Financial Services Deepening Tanzania, CARE.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you, Stella. Can you just answer the question on how
Can you hear
that's...
me now?
Bill, should I continue?
You hear me?
We hear you.
Can you hear me?
Bill, should I
No,
continue?
I can't hear you. I was just explaining how we came up with. Yes. Can I continue now?
Continue.
Hello? John.
Okay, Stella, continue.
You know, I think, John, you're just going to have to go ahead here.
Okay. Okay, as I was saying,
Okay. So am I disconnected now?
Yes, you are. Please continue.
Okay. When Plan Tanzania started implementing VSLAs in 2004, the National Microfinance Policy did not recognize savings groups. They were very new in the landscape of microfinance. So what we have been doing, we realized then that we needed to advocate for their inclusion in the National Microfinance Policy.
and when you say we, who's included in that, Stella?
Plan and CARE were the ones who began the advocacy effort. The Plan and CARE. And in 2009, we began the Banking on Change project, which means we stepped up our efforts in advocacy. And we were trying to advocate on two levels. First, for inclusion in the National Microfinance Policy, and also with other banks, so that they can link savings group. They can for financial inclusion of the savings groups as well. So it was Plan and CARE and Barclays Bank.
Okay, and what specific steps did you take to advocate?
We had a workshop, first of all, a big workshop where we invited all the stakeholders, including the ministries, the Ministry of Cooperatives and Ministry of Finance, and we showcased the projects that were being done in savings groups, showing that savings groups are an effective tool for inclusion of poor people in the financial sector. And they were impressed with this, and we started a dialogue with them. So we visited also the Bank of Tanzania and had a discussion with the Bank of Tanzania director. That was Grace at the time. And we started a dialogue about inclusion of the savings group in the microfinance policy.
Did these efforts go beyond people sitting down together in workshops and meetings and offices? was there any experiential aspect to it where people in policy positions actually learned about the realities of the field?
Yes. First of all, the introduction of the MIS was very helpful because you are able to provide concrete results, concrete reports that showed the amount of savings, the amount of loans, the rate of repayment being so high. So we shared these reports with the stakeholders, and we convinced them that savings group were actually a very effective tool. So the MIS was really a very helpful tool, especially the version where we went, where it was web-based, whereby we invited them to go onto the website and check out all the savings group and how big they have become.
Did they actually, did they ever see a savings group, attend a meeting? Were they able to discuss with any members?
Yes, we invited them to meetings about the savings group. We took them to savings group in the village. We first took them to care projects in Magu, and then we took them to Mwanza and to Dar es Salaam, Kisarawe and Kibaha. We were inviting sector people from the ministries to visit the savings group.
Okay. Now, you said this started back in 2009 was the original idea. I think your first workshop was in like 2011. Here we are in 2016. So what's the outcome?
Okay, thank you. The outcome now, a new draft policy has been drafted, which will go into effect from January 2017, which is a big win for all of us advocating for savings group, because savings group have been specifically included in the new policy, and they have created a category for them and also an oversight body for savings group.
Okay, so they're now recognized, savings groups are recognized as part of the official microfinance.
So that's the outcome.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess it will make it easier.
John, are we still together?
I'm saying that it'll make it easier for other practitioners to gain credibility for their work.
Yes, they have included savings group in the sector. They have created a registration process for them, an oversight body. Yes.
Okay, okay. Bill, we need an executive decision here. We've got one other really interesting example. I'm very conscious of the time limitation.
Sure. We are about 9 minutes left in the broadcast officially, but actually a little less than that, maybe about 7 minutes, but we can go over. So there's at least one question. So I would say if we can go into the next topic quickly.
Absolutely.
And, so
it will also make it easier for savings groups to gain legal recognition, registration, and therefore assess inclusion in the formal financial sector.
Yeah, this example really is related to the first one because at a local level, as I mentioned at the beginning, Plan has worked to create associations of savings groups, which it calls intermediating associations.
Are we still together?
And Stella, these intermediating associations were a creation of Plan, but again, not recognized at the local level, which meant it was difficult for them to do things like open bank accounts. And I believe you led a campaign to help them lobby for official recognition. Could you give us a few of the main details of that campaign?
appears we've lost her again. Stella, are you with us? So,
Okay, well, this, again, Bill, I can respond a bit because I was witness to some of this. This was a very labor-intensive process, and it had to do with actually lobbying in front of the officials of 9 different districts. It wasn't something that was done all at once. It was something that was done progressively over the years. A lot of the techniques were the same that were used in the national campaign. There were meetings, there were workshops, there were visits to the field. There was liberal use of the MIS to produce evidence. And the outcome was that in these 9 districts, where these 141,000 members of PLAN are today, that the EMAs, which are the associations of savings groups, do have legal recognition. They can open bank accounts. They've become eligible for for benefits from the National Poverty Alleviation Campaign. And they basically are respected local institutions in the landscape of district economic life. So that, in brief, is what Plan Tanzania did, both at the national and at district levels, to help members of savings groups advocate for greater recognition, for greater rights, and for the access to greater benefits.
Great. Well, since we're pretty tight on time, what I want to do is open it up to questions, and Layla has been able to find another location, so she won't be leaving us at the top of the hour. So anybody else that does have questions, you can please type them now. But the question I'd like to ask Layla is, this is from Armin Modi, and she asks, when you plan your advocacy strategy, do you implement a top-down or a bottom-up approach?
Okay, great. Yeah, so I mean, the answer really is both. I think that from what we've heard from our other PLAN colleagues on the phone is that a lot of our work that we're doing at the country level is advocacy work, and in that sense, to have a bottom-up approach to advocacy. I mean, the way that it works is that country offices are responsible for advocacy at the country level, and so they're responsible for setting advocacy objectives and advocacy plans and having that within their country strategic approach. And they also carry out research on and kind of monitoring and evidence on their programs. So from that is where that is collated at the international level, and we're able to build a picture of the advocacy that we're doing at the national level in order to build our global advocacy strategy. But it does work the other way as well. So some of the advocacy that we're doing is around the Sustainable Development Goals. So both the advocacy that we've been doing when they were still being developed into trying to shape what those goals are, but also the advocacy that we're doing in an ongoing way in the kind of international space with the various UN agencies to try and use those international spaces to hold governments to account for the SDGs. So it works both ways, and I think our technical advisors, people like John, who's on the webinar today, play a really important role in bringing the kind of expertise and the knowledge of what is happening at the country level to the global level, so that we're the best able to be informed before we go about setting strategy.
So quickly, how did the trainers at Plan International attract women to come to their leadership trainings, as the women in our villages in India are reluctant to waste a single day away from their farm labor, afraid they will lose a day of wages? And also, do these savings groups organized by Plan then run independently, and if so, when? So these are questions maybe John or Michelle can answer.
I don't believe the constraints on women's time in a place like southern Benin are the same as India. You can't put inordinate demands on people's time, which is why the training has to be well organized and interesting. But in the case of Benin, I know that that was not a problem, getting women to participate. The groups theoretically should be independent, should be able to operate on their own after the first year if the training is done well. And as I indicated at the beginning, the quality of groups in Benin has been very high. So while the project does not lose contact with them, the amount of monitoring and training goes way down after one year. And the groups essentially operate independently. The fact that they're organized in networks reinforces cohesion and contacts between groups or among groups, and makes it easier for them to reinforce one another's operations, and as we've seen here, actually expand their engagement in communities to do other things.
We're going to wrap up. We're a little bit over time, and I do want to make a couple of quick announcements. First of all, I want to thank everybody. This has been a little bit of a challenging webinar. We usually have some type of a technical problem, so it's not surprising that we would have a problem this time, but I really appreciate all of you being here from Washington, John Schiller, from the UK, Leila Ansari, Michelle Kanunu from Benin, and Stella, who we lost, I think, somewhere in the last part of the broadcast, but we really appreciate her for joining us. I wanted to give a nod to a really excellent blog from Poverty to Power. This is a blog that is really one of the most read blogs in development by Duncan Green. He's a senior strategic advisor for Oxfam Great Britain, and he also is a professor in practice at the London School of Economics. And he's working on a book that will be out in October called How Change Happens, which really gets into the role of advocacy in development, which more and more I think is an important part of how INGOs and development organizations are doing development, is to really use that powerful tool of people advocating for their own rights on a local or even country or even beyond country level as a powerful way to get things done. If we're really talking about empowering people and giving them opportunity to be agents in their own future, then this is by far the best way to do it. So I want to put that link up there, and this information will be in the PowerPoint, and the recording will be, as usual, posted, so you can access them through the SMDP Plan webinar site, and you can watch the entire video. Plus, you can also get access to the PDF of the PowerPoint and any other resources we have connected to it. I also want to just briefly tell you that we do have some upcoming SMDP programs. Our next Plan webinar will be on October 5th. Beyond savings groups, can income smoothing increase school attendance and educational quality? We'll have registration and more information up about that webinar in a couple of weeks. I also want to announce that we are having another online savings group course, Adaptive Problem Solving and Program Design for Savings Groups, SACCOs, and other member-owned models. We had a really fantastic blended course last year, facilitated by Nancy Lee with guest expert panelists. So we're repeating this, but this will be a fully online course, October 10th to March 10th. And we do have MasterCard scholarships available. And we're happy to also announce another savings group face-to-face workshop, SMDP Kenya, October 31st, November 11th. That will be Hugh Allen and Andrew Manjama, program design and MIS. So as usual, I want to thank everybody for being a part of this webinar, for our guests who came in from various parts of the world. Appreciate your contribution to this, and John for your helping to organize this. And I want to wish everybody a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. And thank you for tuning in to the SMDP Plan webinar. Have a great day.
Okay.